What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today, I have kind of a video request. This was something I was going to react to anyway because I did mention this in the past about, I was curious about how this event happened. So I was going to get to it, but it was recommended by a lot of people. The latest person that recommended it was a user by the name of Kimmel123. I will try to do more video requests this year. That's going to be my that's part of my New Year's resolution. Also, I'm gonna do some more original content like commentary videos where I'm just talking about a specific subject. I will have some drawing videos and some try to do some cartoons. My goal is to have at least one cartoon out by the end of the year because I still have to learn how to do it and like the process in which people make cartoons, because I don't want to make no sloppy looking Microsoft Paint, rest in peace, looking videos. But I do want to have something out that looks decent. Also, since Microsoft Paint isn't a thing anymore, what will we use to describe a very low quality looking picture or art or a piece of art that was made using computers? Like what would we describe it as? Because where I was from, we always used the term like Microsoft Paint. Like that was the bar for low quality pictures. Now what is the bar? Like what is it now? It's gone now that Microsoft Paint isn't a thing. But anyway, this is Feature History's video on the fall of Yugoslavia. This is part 1 of 2. I will probably have part 2 out tomorrow. And before I get into it, I do want to let you guys know, Feature History have made videos in the past that I've done reactions to. In particular, the what was it? I believe it was the one about the it was about Ireland. I forgot the specific name of it, but I think it was the Troubles. So it was covering the period of the Troubles in Ireland. A lot of people said that it didn't have all the facts, or it was missing a lot of things. And before I, get into it or anything, I want to let you guys know, whenever I watch videos like this, I don't automatically go in just assuming that was all that happened. I assume there were a lot of things that were missed, so I will go about looking for more information myself. I try to get different perspectives. Like I try to get the perspective from a source that might be leaning towards the British, and then I'll get one that might be leaning towards the Irish. That way I can get a decent idea based on like corroborating facts and things like that, so I can have a good picture of what is likely agreed upon that happened. But as far as like the smaller details where there's like a conflict of opinion in, that's something I probably will never know, because the only way you're really going to know is if you were there, or if you're somebody that is from that area and you know about that culture. I have already admitted I don't know that. I'm an outsider looking in, so I'll probably never have a full idea of what it's like, or have a good idea of what the facts are, because I'm getting it from 2 different sources, and obviously both sides will probably be pushing stuff a little bit more towards their idea of what happened. So all I can do is just listen and just get the gist of everything. But with that being said, this video could be even more like that, because I don't know a lot about the fall of Yugoslavia. Like recently I was still referring to the area as Yugoslavia because that's just what I knew at the time. I didn't hear about the conflict in that former country until relatively recently. I want to say maybe the last like 5 years or so. And even then, it's like I'm a big sports fan, so the way I like first learned about it was with the situation with Divac and the Croatian national basketball team back in the early 90s, because I believe there was an event where like someone that was part of I don't know if they were part of like a group that was against the government at the time or was for the government at the time, but they ran onto the court with a flag, and Divac, like he saw it and he took the flag and he like threw it away or got rid of it. And in his words, he said he did it because at that moment it was about sports. It wasn't about trying to make it a political thing. He didn't want anyone to come in and try to like influence it in any way. He just he wanted it just to be about the sport because they had just won a championship or something like that. And it's like they say, like even to this day he still has like people that have issues with him from wherever that side was. And I don't know, that's the most I know about it. So this is me finally having a chance to sit down and learn more about the former Yugoslavia and everything that happened with it. So let's jump into this and see what it has to offer.
Today we're going to crack open a case on Yugoslavia, or should I say, Yugoslavia. I'm gonna kill myself.
And again, even though I'm watching this, I'm not going to assume this is everything that you need to know. If you want to learn more, treat this like a simplified video and research more.
Hello and
about
welcome to Feature History, featuring the fall of Yugoslavia and most likely a shitstorm in the comments. Now this video, or videos, are going to be quite long and complicated, so I'm not going to pad this intro out too long.
You can't avoid that, you just gotta accept it.
Right now. Should really stop. The series of wars that saw the end of Yugoslavia brought a close on an era and opened a new one alongside the dawn of a new millennia. This new era began in an orgy of violence, war crimes and geopolitics. Great stuff. But first I should bring us back to the old era. And the older era. Maybe even the older era. Get something to eat, this will be a long one. The Balkans, for a measurably long-ass time, has been an ethnically diverse region in Europe. It served as a border of Western, Eastern and Islamic worlds. Its long history consists of many independent kingdoms as well as even more empires attempting to conquer the region. The Byzantines, Ottomans and Austrians all took their shot at the region, but as nationalism took hold in the late 19th century, things were to change. Yugoslavia, a unified kingdom of southern Slavs, was the dream of their intellectuals as early as the 17th century. It'd be the ticket to their independence, a state united and a state that could resist foreign tyranny. Near the end of World War I, the southern Slavs under Austro-Hungarian rule broke away as a state of Slovenes, Croats and Serbs. The whole thing was a bit of a mess.
I believe I did mention something in another video related to European conflicts, and I said like most of the conflicts in Europe has to do with like ethnic groups and things like that. And I'm not going to like say what needs to be done or what doesn't need to be done because again, outsider, don't know what the hell's going on or the history of those areas, so how dare I step up and try to pretend like I can solve these problems. But all I can ask is there some type of resolution? Like what would be the goal, the end goal for this? Because I would imagine the end goal would be all the ethnic groups have their own land that they can call their own, because that's pretty much what all places want. But like, what is the situation? Like, what is it? Because maybe certain areas there's conflict in, or like what is going on with that? And is there a way to actually like solve it? And if it is, what's the best way to say this? How long do you think it would take to solve it? Like, do you think it's something that could be fixed within our lifetimes, or is it something that is kind of like with other conflicts where it's like it's going to be centuries of fighting?
And they turned to the only person who had an army in the area, the Kingdom of Serbia. They willingly entered a state of union with Serbia and Montenegro, forming the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes on December 1st, 1918. It was later retitled to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1929, considering the old name was shit. Time passed and the kingdom was alright, but in the late 1930s their province of Croatia was pressured by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy into pushing for more autonomy, and perhaps even independence. In 1941 the kingdom was invaded, divided and conquered. The Croatians were offered an independent state by the Germans. Under a checkered flag, the separatist Croatians were encouraged to begin a genocide against the Serbs, inspired by old religious rivalries. Throughout the war, royalists and partisans fought against the occupation. Communist revolutionary Josip Broz Tito distinguished himself when he led the partisans to victory. Tito's partisans were devoted to him, and so the former monarch of Yugoslavia was to remain in exile as Tito, with some support from the Soviets, established the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in 1945. The country was organized as a federation of 6 socialist republics: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Slovenia and Serbia. In addition, Serbia held the 2 autonomous states of Kosovo and Vojvodina, and hosted the country's capital of Belgrade. Under Tito, the country was a dictatorship. a one-party state with the president for life. It operated on propaganda and doing whatever was necessary to maintain brotherhood and unity.
That's always a red flag. I don't give a damn what the history of a country is. Stay the hell away from dictatorships. They never work out properly.
It operated on propaganda.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. He did mention that this was a communist leader. I do want to say something, and some people probably will take this and just run with it, even though they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Communism is not something that is not automatically authoritarian. Like, people, when they talk about communism, especially in America, they always like automatically jump to authoritarian. Like, they talk about Stalin's Russia, or they talk about Mao Zedong's China, or Hugo Chavez's Venezuela, or whatever else. And it's like Cuba, Fidel Castro. Those are authoritarian governments. Like, again, the thing about communists, like the pure idea of communism, is it's never actually been done. Personally, I don't think it ever can be done because it's something that goes against human nature. But I just wanted to correct that. Like, people automatically jump to these other things, and part of it, honestly, is because of American propaganda. We have really demonized the idea of communism, and the funny thing is, when I stop and think about it, I don't really know. Well, I think I have an idea, but it's funny when people like try to demonize communism, because it's like capitalism can be just as vicious and deadly if given an authoritarian leader. Like, under a 100% pure capitalist society, there'd be child labor, there'd be no regulations, so companies would be able to just dump whatever they want into the wild. They can pay their employees however little amount they want. They could, like, go back to the early, like, 1900s, late 1800s in America, when they had companies that had like towns that their employees would live in, and like you couldn't just leave your job. You were just like, you were stuck there, and they were paying you below, like they were paying you below what minimum wage is today, like way below. And when I say below, I mean like related to inflation. Like, even after taking inflation into account, the equivalent of what it is now is still lower than that. So, like, both sides are horrible. Now, the reason why I think that America demonized communism, is because it was a threat to the free market, and America likes making money. So the idea of having a communist regime kind of goes against that, because you're destroying your private sector, and that means they won't be able to make as much money. So that's why they demonized it, because it couldn't have been for human atrocities and things like that. Because remember, this is America around the time of Jim Crow and discrimination against women, and LGBT people were still being discriminated against. This was still a country that was very heavily religious, so saying like there were a lot of like areas that still had like blasphemy laws. So it wasn't anything to do with human rights, because we were violating human rights in America. So obviously it was more to it. I think personally it was about that. Also, because in a communist society, America would have less influence. Because remember, with the Marshall Plan and everything else, America was all about passing out checks. And if all the countries were to fall to communism, then the Soviet Union would have probably been the pillar in the community, as far as like the country that everybody is getting influenced by. So, yeah. And also, you got to remember, around the time America was doing coups and funding revolutionary groups, that they themselves were not these fighters of freedom. Why did I say that? Why not just say freedom fighters? They weren't freedom fighters. They were regimes that went in to create their own dictatorships, but America didn't have a problem with that. Now, I'm shitting on America right now, but it's only because we've glorified the idea of communism and demonized capitalism, despite the fact that I'm not a capitalist myself. I'm a social democrat. I will openly say that I'm somebody that believes in social programs in a democratic overall system. But when I hear people talk about these things, it just makes me like slap my forehead, because it's like, I mean, well, it makes me want to facepalm, because it's like these people didn't bother to learn about what capitalism or what communism is. They're just using it as a buzzword to throw around to attack something. And it's like, you make your, like, you kill your own argument when you use something flat out wrong. Because if you're trying to convince somebody of something and you say something that's just demonstrably false, it's going to be hard to convince them. Even if the rest of the stuff you said around it is true, because that was so wrong, you just lost credibility. So now they just like dismiss you. And when you're dealing with people that already don't like what you're saying, they're just looking for an out to dismiss your entire claim. That is the last thing you want to do. Now, I know I took a long pause right there, but let's get back into it.
TITO, the country, was a dictatorship, a one-party state with a president for life. It operated on propaganda and doing whatever was necessary to maintain brotherhood and unity. Due to disagreements with Stalin and risking a near war with the Soviets, Yugoslavia became a strange blend of East and West in a time where that wasn't a good idea. It was a great idea though, as foreign aid came in from both sides, and the country began to liberalise and form a unique brand of socialism known as Titoism. Tito would evoke his former life as a poor farmer and his reputation as a war hero to remain relatable and beloved with the people he reigned over.
That's another funny thing, because he mentioned the term Titoism, and that goes into the whole people not understanding communism too, because there's different brands of communism. Like, people assume like it's just like one flavor fits all, whereas there are different styles of communism. There's Stalinism, there's Maoism, and right here, like he said, there's Titoism. Normally named after the people that were running the communist countries. They tend to have their own like blend of what communism was. Like, for example, communism in China today is clearly different than what communism was in the Soviet Union back during the Cold War. You know, you can just look at it and tell. Communism in China today, like, embrace a free market kind of. Like, you can still do business in China. Whereas in the Soviet Union, there was none of that. So it's like, there are different types of it. Don't get me wrong. All the ones that tend to get listed still are bad. But people, again, need to understand the differences between them. Just like when someone mentions socialism and people automatically associate it with communism in Venezuela and Cuba, and it's like, no. Stop and actually read what the hell it is before you start attacking it. Because when you attack it and you don't know what the hell you're talking about, you come off looking stupid.
Farmer and his reputation as a war hero to remain relatable and beloved with the people he reigned over. He was quick to crack down on nationalistic sentiment and so held the country together firmly. But all knew it couldn't last. Tito died on May 4th, 1980, aged 87. The old man had left the people. And so what was after Tito? Well, Tito. The presidency was decentralized and became collective, made up of representatives and a mostly symbolic president of the presidency.
Uh-oh. Normally when stuff like that happens, when you have a country that has a leader that rules with an iron fist and they die and there's no like proper successor, it leaves a power vacuum, which is probably going to get into why there was a war or a civil war to begin with. This is what tends to happen.
And became collective, made up of representatives and a mostly symbolic president of the presidency. They tried to pretend for almost a decade that Tito was living on. Only when the Cold War ended, the foreign aid ceased and the economy came tumbling down did the people realize Tito was gone. The problems caused people to search for someone to blame. In Kosovo, the blame was put on the Albanians living in the area. Kosovar Serbs claimed Kosovar Albanians were pushing them out of the country and began a counter-movement against this. President of Serbia, Ivan Stambolic, decided he would send his right-hand man Slobodan Milosevic to quell the unrest in '87. When he arrived, however, he spoke only what the Kosovar Serbs wanted to hear. He created himself a devoted following. In what would be called the anti-bureaucratic revolution, he used his supporters to force governments in Vojvodina, Montenegro and Kosovo to be replaced with his allies. Eventually, Stambolic was forced to resign in favour of Milosevic in '89. With he and his allies in control of many areas in Yugoslavia, his representative in the presidency, Borisav Jovic, led a voting bloc. The power was used to erode the autonomy of
What did that
Kosovo.
say?
Borisov led a voting bloc.
They all have the same flag, okay.
The power was used to erode the autonomy of Kosovo and Vojvodina. The Albanian miners of Kosovo collaborated in a strike against this in '89. Milosevic had federal police troops moved in. With this, he could crack down on the Albanians. This kind of action did not sit well with the republics of Croatia and Slovenia. Slovenia's media ran with stories of Milosevic the fascist. Milosevic deemed that this was only spreading unfounded fear of Serbia and attempted to see authorities restrict Slovenia's press, only driving further sentiment that Slovenia must escape Serbia's influence. Milosevic attempted to use his Kosovar Serbs to depose Slovenia's dissident president Milan Kucan. Croatia backed up Slovenia, refusing passage to the protesters. The political stalemate led to the 14th Congress being convened in January 1990. The Congress was attended by delegates from all republics and provinces. The debate was reform, whether to offer more autonomy to the republics of Yugoslavia or to build a stronger state of brotherhood and unity. Every proposal from Kucan was shot down by the Serbian voting bloc. The climate became tense and very, very frustrating. The Slovenian delegation walked, leaving the Congress. When Milosevic attempted to continue without them, Croatia, Macedonia and Bosnia and Herzegovina walked too. There was no unity to be found. When each republic held their first ever free election, nationalist parties began to defeat the former communist ones in Macedonia, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia. In Croatia, the controversial Franjo Tudman had come to power under the promise to protect them from Milosevic. His nationalistic sentiment and his readiness to embrace the old checkered flag brought back painful memories of the genocides that had scarred many Serbian families. The Croatian Serbs refused to let this happen again and rose up in Knin in August, securing small arms and barricading roads. They demanded that if Croatia chose to secede, that the Serbian majority areas, or as they would later proclaim themselves, the Republic of Serbian Krajina, would not. Borisav Jovic, now head of the Yugoslav presidency, was ready to offer support to the Croatian Serbs' concerns. Tudman, however, would not accept this and had helicopters dispatched to Knin ready to put down the rebellion. Jovic showed his hand when 2 Yugoslav fighter jets intercepted the helicopters and forced them to return to base. Serbia's influence had now consumed the Yugoslav People's Army, and so Tudman would have to find his own way to fight. Hungarian arms began to be smuggled into Croatia, and at the same time Slovenes held a referendum asking the people if they desired independence. The people answered yes. The results of the referendum and later in '91, the exposure of Croatians' arms smuggling, led to the army command requesting the presidency enact a state of emergency. Croatian representative, Stjepan Mesic, strongly debated the army head and Jovic. He accused the two of attempting to create a greater Serbia, whereas the army head insisted foreign powers were conspiring to destroy Yugoslavia.
There's already 2 signs of possible bad government or like leaning towards dictatorship, totalitarianism. Suppressing the press, that's step 1, or one of the steps. And when military leaders start to get involved, that's step 2. Like, you know, anytime the military starts to get involved, that's when it gets bad, because you want to have the military on your side, and whoever has the military on their side has the chips in their corner. It goes to something that I mentioned before with King Rutherford. King Rutherford is a chess player, and every once in a while I'll joke about something like this, and it's just a joke. I don't mean anything serious by it, but like, he can clearly kick my ass in chess. But I always make the joke, like, okay, but can you kick my ass? So like, the whole joke is like, oh yeah, you can beat me in chess, but can you beat me in a fight though? And the joke being, or not the joke, but me and him actually sat down and had a serious discussion about it. Like, when you think about it, when someone mentions that, they're talking about, like, when it gets like down to fighting and things like that, fighting is the final conflict. No matter what the situation is, if the person that's the better fighter is involved in it, they hold the bargaining chips. Like, if we were having a discussion, or if we were playing a game, or whatever else, if I decide, you know what, I'm not satisfied, I'm just going to kick your ass, that person is the one dictating the situation. Like, if they ever decide to do something, everything is in their corner. So it don't matter if you can do certain things, like you might be able to be better than them at a game, or you might be better than them when it comes to singing and dancing, or when it comes to sports, or when it comes to whatever the hell else. They're the ones that at the end of the day can decide how the situation turns out. And that just goes into this. Like, that's the reason why having the military on your side is so important, because at the end of the day, if you're only going to find things working in your favor if the military decides to accept things in your favor. If they don't and say, you know what, no, we're just going to take everything. Like, what can you do about that? If the military is against you, then there's not really anything you can do. You just got to kind of accept that. Unless you have a force that can rival the military, in which case you probably don't. I mean, maybe you got a strategy that works better, but whatever the better fighting force is always the one that has the bargaining chips. So let this be a lesson. If you are listening to me, learn how to fight. Learn how to train yourself, learn how to fight, whatever the hell else, because as much as you might want to be a diplomat or a pacifist or whatever else, and you want to settle things peacefully and you just want to talk your way through this, that, and the other, at the end of the day, all that talking doesn't mean a damn thing if the person that you're trying to talk to doesn't want to talk and just wants to fight. I mean, of course, you can talk about guns and things like that too. That kind of is more of that's a bit of an equalizer. But let's say everything is stripped away. That at the end of the day, it's about being able to handle yourself with just what your body, just what nature is giving you. Because you might not always have a gun on you. You might not always have these extra things that you might be superior in, but at the end of the day, you always have your 2 hands and your 2 feet, and you can express yourself using those. So learn how to use those as best as you can. I know that was a bit of a tangent, but
regardless if either were true or not, it would mean war. The vote was placed in the Bosnian representative's hands, and after some serious umming and erring, it was rejected. Things calmed very, very slightly, but when Jovic's term came to an end in May and it was time that Mesic took head, he was blocked and the title offered to another Milosevic loyalist. The Croatians responded with an independence referendum that won in a landslide, most likely because the Croatian Serbs didn't show up to vote. On June 25th, 1991, both the republics of Slovenia and Croatia declared their independence, beginning the very violent domino collapse of Yugoslavia.
The 10-day war.
The fighting in Croatia had been on for some time, but now with official declarations, the YPA saw fit to involve themselves. They moved an army to Slovenia's border, which immediately prompted reactions from the Slovenes. The meant-to-be, but they totally didn't, decommissioned territorial defences prepared resistance on border checkpoints and important roads, repelling the relatively small initial Yugoslav force. A short war with little casualties, a rarity in future, the conflict would be creatively named the 10-Day War. The European community placed pressure on the belligerents to open negotiations, leading to the Brioni Agreement on July 7, 1991. Croatia, Slovenia and Yugoslavia agreed to withdraw the YPA from Slovenia and allow Slovenia to take control of their borders, given that Croatia and Slovenia suspend their declarations for 3 months. This 3 months barely fazed the fighters battling in Croatia, but Slovenia used this time to make themselves into an actual country, while the YPA prepared an invasion into that country that couldn't fail. The plan was scrapped though on the reason that it's Slovenia who gives a shit. And so Slovenia had slipped away, but at the cost of leaving Croatia in the YPA's sights.
Croatian War of
TUDMAN'S fight stemmed from his insistence that he'd defend every inch of Croatia. In spite of it though, the rebels had made great successes, securing many Serb-majority towns and then some. Yugoslavia offered support as well, giving the rebels equipment and artillery. Later the YPA itself arrived at the border as peacekeepers that allowed the rebels to push forward and siege Vukovar in August. Things looked fairly bleak in Yugoslavia. So bleak that Macedonia passed a referendum and left. Just like that. Really makes everything seem a bit dramatic. The bleakness also caught the attention of The Hague, who arranged a peace conference with all 6 presidents. Tudjman insisted Croatia had the right to secede. Milosevic countered that then Krajina should too. Lord Carrington, head of the conference, asked if Milosevic would be prepared to accept Croatian independence if it was subject to the human rights of Serbs living outside of Serbia. Milosevic answered yes. When the written deal arrived though, it stated that all 6 republics would take this route. Milosevic could not agree. He had no intentions of breaking up Yugoslavia. By November, Vukovar fell, and those who had resisted were subject to massacre. By the dawn of 1992, a UN ceasefire would put a pause to the pain. However, another conflict had been brewing alongside the Battle of Vukovar. Yep, that's enough of that. I nearly would have gone and spoiled you there. Part 2 will be out around the end of the month if I actually stick to schedule, so expect it next month. See ya.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, not crazy like stupid or anything, but crazy like, you know, the level of conflict and things like that is astounding. But yeah, I mean, there's still stuff I'm gonna have to look into because there's a lot of things that still went over my head after watching this. I'm gonna have to watch it a second time to get things out of this and then go and do some more research into it behind the scenes. One of the things that I love about doing reactions to videos like this is because when I do upload them, you guys will leave comments in the comment section, and that's what I look to probably more than anything. Like when it comes to making videos and stuff, making videos are fun and uploading them are fun, but for me, the biggest thing is comments. Like that's one of the things I love the most. I read almost every comment I can. One of the things that I actually hate about YouTube is that once you become so big of a channel and you start getting a lot of like views and comments and stuff, it starts to summarize the comments you get. Like I can't read everything that's submitted. I can like it gives me a notification every once in a while of like comments, but it doesn't give me all the comments. I want to read everything that's posted, including stuff that was posted in a reply thread, things that were posted in succession with each other. Like I want to read all of it, and I don't know if there's a setting for that because I haven't seen one, but if there is, I'm gonna try to find it. But I know that you guys tend to be a hell of a lot smarter than what any of the people that release videos have, because no matter what the video is, if it's a history related video, there's someone in the comment section that has a correction. So like the internet is, while at the same time it's one of the most batshit crazy places that's ever existed, it's also one of the greatest encyclopedias that's ever existed. Just from the people that are there. I mean, just think about it. The best encyclopedia that humanity's ever had is probably Wikipedia, and that is just user submitted entries. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. If there's more that you think that I should look into, or if you have some resources that you think would be best to teach me more about this, some things that might have been missed in this video, or just some more information as far as like details that were rather small in this that are probably more important than the video was letting you know, leave it in the comment section down below and I'll be checking them out. And yeah, if there's anything you guys want to talk about, even if it's something like as small as the whole Vlade Divac situation and what the opinions of him are in those countries now, leave those in the comment section. Like I'd love to like get information about all that stuff. But with that being said, I'm Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you've been enlightened. I look forward to seeing you guys on a future episode, which will come out tomorrow. Until then, I am going to give you the deuces, and I'm signing out. Deuces.